Hey, Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello, everybody. Bob Lusk. It must be Wednesday. Going live, hanging out with you guys. Hey, welcome. Glad you're here. Let's. You guys know the drill. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comments section. Click like. Share this to your timeline, and you're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat and whatever else Leanne's got in the swag bucket up at our office there in Whitesboro, Texas. Hey, and you guys know the drill. $35 a year. Bam, full of nuggets, all kinds of stuff. If you got a pond, you need Pond Boss. $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. I've had a fun few days. My gosh, last week I went to New Mexico to hang out with a long-time dear friend of mine, Dr. Johnny Funderburg, who officiated Debbie's and my wedding 20 years ago. And he'd had back surgery and called and wanted to know if I could come hang out with him. And I thought, I can't think of a better reason. So we did, and we got to tell a bunch of stories and hang out with each other and share philosophies and just be present, which I don't get to do that very often with people, and it was really fun to do that. Then I got home, and let's see, I don't even remember over the weekend we had some family fun. We went to a party at LL Comatu. The people that bought our place invited us to come hang out and MC a company party. So they had a kind of a team building thing and invited their whole staff of about 40 people up there to hang out. And Debbie got to tell stories about the house, and I got to kind of help do that as well. So I tell you what I'm thinking about talking about is what happened yesterday and today. And so I thought, and actually Monday and yesterday and today. So let's see, we got, look at there, Jim Allen's first one up to bat, I see. Good to see you, Jim. Jay Spires from Cold Floyd, Virginia. James is hanging out in Kentucky. Jim emailed me a while ago asking me where's the best place to collect a scale or several scales to try to age a fish. So I thought that was a kind of a cool question. Whenever I've tried to age fish with a scale, I'll pull 5 scales off the lateral line and then pat them dry, add a little bit of betadine so they can be dyed, and then look at them under either a microscope or in the field we just use magnifying glass sometimes. So that's pretty cool. Let's see here. Mike Cottrell from Palo Pinto County. You've been getting some rain over there, man. You ought to have some water in your pond. Look at that. Ron Ardoin. Spent yesterday and part of the day before yesterday with Ron with a couple of his running buddies over that they bought a ranch. The Harrises, Mr. Harris and his son, Mr. Harris. Those two guys are a hoot, especially the dad. So we had a great time. He was grilling me pretty good, asking me a lot of questions, which I absolutely love that. And it was, now you understand. He said, do you understand? Yeah, I think I do to you. That was pretty fun. So hanging out with Charlie and Brian, that was fun. Water really cooled down quick. And I'm going to talk about the Harris's situation because that applies to a lot of people out there. Let's see here. Doug Cusick, 42 to 43 degrees in South Central. I totally believe that. That water temperature is dropping quick. Todd Austin, good to see you, Doug Cusick. John Funk from Snowyman, Michigan. I read your email the other day. Haven't had a chance to respond because I've been in my truck. I think I've driven 1,600 miles since Monday morning. That's a lot. That's a whole lot. So, let me see here. Let me see who else is here. See if we got any questions. I got to scroll down here and look. Dustin Crawley, good to see you. Drew Bachman, hello from South Kakalaki. I love that. Wayne and Josie. I was just thinking about you guys about 10 minutes ago, wondering how you guys are going, how you're doing. See if you're, and I want to ring y'all's number and just kind of catch up with you because I know you've been in the middle of building a house and I haven't heard from you, so that kind of makes me wonder just how things are going because I know how it went over here. Let's see here. Danny Mack. Holy cow, everything's scrolling by a little too fast here. I can't catch up. 58-degree water there, and when he's aerating, when the water temperature is 65. Good. Good. There's Virgil Meyer. Good to see Virgil. He's from up in Iowa. He built a really nice lake. I tell you what. Virgil, there's a lot of people doing the same thing that you just did, and you got a jump start on all them. I can't tell you, and I've looked at probably 5 lakes just in the last 3 or 4 weeks of people that are at the beginning of what you just went through. It's pretty darn fun. Hello, Owen Wilson and Dustin Crawley. Dustin from Chattanooga, and Owen is from Nebraska. So I want to kind of tell you what I've been up to. Monday, I left early in the morning because I knew it was going to rain, and headed over to meet with Ron Ardoin and the Harrises, Charlie and Brian. And they've got a hunting ranch that they bought. It used to be a hunting club not far from Port Gibson, Mississippi. So I just hooked it straight east across Interstate 20. Got there a little after noon, 12:30 or something like that. And I knew the rain was going to be just about 3 or 4 hours behind us because I'd been watching it track across Texas and then into Louisiana. It was coming right at us. So I knew we needed to get out there and get things rolling. Hello, John Henry. Good to see you, buddy. Put your John Henry on this one, John Henry. It's good to see you, buddy. And so the mission there was they've got a site picked out. And I had talked to Brian several months ago and looked at their property on Google Earth. And then I used MapRight. That's my favorite program because you can use like 6 different maps to get different perspectives on the way the land lays. And, you know, sometimes the satellite photos are from the wintertime, so the leaves are off the trees. And I mean, you can see different things. Hello, Mark Overby. So what the mission was, he pretty well dialed in to wanting to build a pond right next to their cabin. Hello, Michael Eric up there in Iowa. Good to see you. You and Virgil are kind of side by side, about 70 miles apart up there. So the mission was to see if we could figure out what it would take to build a reasonable sized pond there on this hunting lease, or hunting ranch. Actually, they own it. And so I'd already studied the maps pretty hard, but I really didn't have a good feel for the way the ground lays. So I always, when I'm getting ready to talk to somebody about building a lake, the first thing I always do is look at maps, every time. I want to do the best I can to get an understanding of topographical maps, the way the water flows and how it can flow. I want to get an idea of what's surrounding the land. I want to see aerial imagery. You know, and then at that point I start looking to see are there any good spots to put a dam. And if there is, then when I get on the ground with folks, then we can ride around and start looking and just see what really makes sense. Well, as I measured the watershed, it wasn't very big. So we started doing a little bit of math. Hello, Michael Gray. Good to see you. He's from over there around Nashville, Tennessee. Owen Nelson, aerating 24/7 in southern Nebraska winter. Any reason one should not? Yeah, let me tackle that here in a minute. Yeah, there is a reason not to. Hello, Samuel Jenkins from Bristol, Tennessee. Good to see you. So here's kind of the process. I look at how big is the watershed. Well, this watershed might be 10 acres. Well, in most regions where I work, it takes about 8 to 10 acres of watershed to support 1 acre, surface acre of pond. So when we saw that we had maybe 8 to 10 acres, when looking at it on the map, I thought it could be as much as 12 to 15, but it's not. It's 8 to 10 acres. So we started doing a little math, pulled out my little cell phone, started kind of trying to figure it out, see how was this going to work, look at it, and they get about, I looked it up on the weather page, and they get an average annual rainfall of 58 inches a year there, straight down. So we started looking, and they wanted to push it to be as big as it could be, but not so big that it wouldn't fill up, and not too small that it wouldn't be fun. So as we started kind of dialing in on it, we saw a good spot to build a dam, picked it out on the map, had already looked at it on the ground, and economically it's going to make sense, because when you start looking at these things, you got to figure out what are they going to cost. Is that bang worth the buck? So you look at the watershed first, and the second thing we look at is what kind of dirt do they have. I mean, you didn't have to look very far. There's clay all over that place. Now, the site where they want to build this pond sits right at the edge of the compound or the campsites where all the hunters used to have their cabins. Well, they've gotten rid of a bunch of the cabins, dolled it up a little bit, gotten several cabins there for guests, and they want this pond to sit where you can throw a rock off a porch and hit a fish right between the eyes. And then as we sat down talking about the goals, Charlie had a little different goals than Brian. Charlie's goals were, hey, I want to have beautiful water to look at. I'd like to catch a few fish, maybe eat some, but I want to be able to see a food plot right across the pond where the deer come right down to the pond. Well, where Brian was more interested in, hey, I'd really like to have good catch rates for kids and grandkids, and where we can go out and increase the value of the property as well. Mike Otto's got a saying, he says, all land sells. I can't tell you how many times I go to a piece of property and people say, it's been in my family for 5 generations. We're not selling. Somebody's going to sell at some point. And that's actually kind of what happened with this piece of property. It had gotten distributed, dispersed, rearranged, and it was time to sell. So they did. And so after we look at the watershed size and do we have any clay, now where's the best place to put a dam? So we started looking on the maps again, figured out a good spot, looked at it. We'd already looked at it on the ground. So they're going to be able to put in like a 260 to 280 foot long dam that's going to be maybe 12 to 15 feet tall. They'll have water that ranges in depth from 6 to 15 feet deep. And it'll be a pond that covers slightly more than 4 acres. Now that's where the catch-22 is. So we had to do some math. And the math at 58 inches of rain a year works. So we dialed it down and tried to get a little bit more conservative. So we started looking at how much dirt how much water, at 40 inches, if they get 40 inches of runoff. And boy, that was right on the cusp of being enough to be able to fill that pond and keep it full as long as they don't have an extended drought. So I'm going to suggest that and Ron had suggested this, that they look at a well. So we'll be talking to them about that just to see what that looks like. So that's kind of where we're going with that. And the more I look, you could tell in that where there's a creek, and the creek had ended abruptly where water was really just rolling down over the side of the dirt. So you could tell that over time, a bunch of topsoil had washed down and made kind of a swale that had grown up with trees, and they just got there removing the trees to make a food plot. So now they're going to meet with the bulldozer guy who was supposed to come there yesterday, and he didn't make it. And then he was supposed to come today, and I don't think he made it either. So now the next deal is to talk with the earth mover and see what it would take to do the dirt work and kind of get an idea on a cost. And then after that, then we start talking about habitat. But while I was there, they were asking a lot of questions, which I embrace that. I love that. The more questions you ask, the more answers you get, the smarter you are, the more it makes sense, the easier it is to convey to the earth mover. So we looked at a 30-minute video that my good friend Chico put together with me on fish habitat. And then scrolling down here on the Pond Boss Facebook page, there's a real good video from a lake near Texarkana, Arkansas, that shows some nice features for habitat on the bottom of this renovated Oxbow Lake. So that's pretty cool too. Hello, Trent Coker. Latham Pugh got his new magazine. Yay, good deal. Oh, I never know whether the post office is going to do their job. Tyler Shockham Markley. Did you already talk about aeration during the winter? No, I have not. I'm fixing to. Matter of fact, let's knock that out right now. So Owen Nelson said, aerating 24/7 in southern Nebraska winter, any reason one should not? Yes, there is a reason not to. So here's what I'm going to tell you. Let's do this. Let's go here. Water at 39 degrees is the heaviest it can be. If you take a gallon of water, 39 degrees, and you weigh it, it's the heaviest it can be. As it warms up from that and cools from that, it expands. Now, there's not many fish that like water cooler than about 39 or 40 degrees. And if you think about it, as the water temperature drops and it expands, it gets to 32 degrees and it freezes, right? Well, ice floats. So if you got a glass of ice water and you're looking at that ice floating on top, the water below it has to be warmer than 32 degrees or it would be ice. So in states where ponds freeze, in Kansas, you fit this role, and so does Nebraska. It's real important to me to have an ice layer form on top of that pond to preserve your warmer temperatures. Because when you've got that 5, 6, 7-inch layer of ice on top, you can pretty well bet that the water beneath that is going to be 39 or 40 degrees. Now, the reason to aerate a pond is to add oxygen or let the water communicate with the atmosphere so it can absorb oxygen. But the problem comes when you're aerating and you're moving that water and you're keeping a hole in the ice open. You're also chilling that water way, 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 way down. And it's going to be cold all winter long. And fish, even rainbow trout, don't like water that's 32 and a half degrees. And that will happen. That 7-degree difference in from 32 and a half to 38, 39 and a half is a huge difference to the metabolism of those fish. So 33-degree water is stressful, especially to warm water fish like bluegills and red ear sunfish and largemouth bass and fish like that. So that's a real good reason not to aerate. Now, another reason to not aerate is for safety. If you leave your diffusers where they are now, or you've been aerating in cold water, and an animal walks out, or heaven forbid a kid walks out and gets out there in the middle and falls in, can't get out, man, that's a bad deal. And I read about something like that happening every 3 or 4 years. There was I remember a fella, and I don't remember the total story, but I think he might have been in Minnesota, took his tractor out on his pond because he wanted to scrape some snow off with his box blade, but he got too close to where the aeration system was and his tractor fell through and it killed him. So safety is another reason. Now, I can't really tell you why not to do it without telling you why to do it. So if you want to aerate, a good reason to aerate throughout the winter is if you've got an excessive amount of aquatic plants going into the winter. If you've got a lot of plants, that haven't died off yet, the risk of them causing an oxygen depletion is higher than if you didn't. So if you didn't have them. So in that case, what I'll tell people is to take the hose and pull the diffuser in closer to the shore to where it's in water maybe 5 feet deep. Now, if you try to use a diffuser and aerate in water less than 5 feet deep, it's not efficient. So 5-foot depth is okay, but just keep in mind the consequences that you're very likely to cool your water down more than you want. There's Josiah. Good to see Josiah. And there's Fred Bigaman. Good to see Fred and Connie. Clinton, Missouri. Been there, done that. We've talked about that before. Let's see here. Ben Custron, you talked last week about burning leaves and cattails around ponds. Are there any side effects, good or bad, from the ash from burning? No, there's really not. Typically, the volume of the ash from burning is so minute compared to the biomass that you would have if you didn't burn that it's really, really not that relevant. It's not relevant much at all, if any. Because, when you burn cattails or you burn a pile of leaves, and you take a pile of leaves or say cattails that are 6 feet tall, 8 feet wide, and 25 feet, and you pull all those out and you pile them up, it'll make a pile about as big as a pickup truck. But when you burn those down, if you can keep all the ashes in one spot, it wouldn't even fill up a 5-gallon bucket. That's how many ashes you get out of that after you burn it efficiently. So it's not really going to have any side effects. It's not going to change your chemistry of your water. Now, if you've got lots and lots and lots of ash, it can change the chemistry, but not just from burning some leaves or burning some cattails. That's not a big deal. Harrison Davis checking in from Georgia. David George checking in from Mount Pleasant, Iowa. Good to see you guys. I was looking on my phone just before I started the show, and I saw where somebody had come on, Clean Line Painting had come on, if he's watching, to the November 2nd show, which was a couple of weeks ago. Why do red ear in some lakes not have red ears? It's pretty simple, because they're girls. The males have the ones with the greatest color. Oftentimes, a female red ear sunfish won't have that red. So there's the answer for clean line painting. Josiah, I'm getting 400 walleye this week, 5 to 6 inches long. How deep does my water need to be, and how many per acre should I stock? I have several ponds. Well, it's a little late to be asking that question since you're getting them this week. So if they're 5 to 6 inches long, let's talk about this a minute. Let me pick this question apart a little bit. Danny Mack, will a diffuser pull water from a deeper depth? When you've got it up shallow, I presume that's what Danny's asking. Will it pull water from a deeper depth? It won't pull water from a deeper depth. But what it will do is when it forms that mushroom, it'll take colder water and force it down. So it can diffuse that warm water down low simply because that colder water can be pushed down. Now the good news is when the water's cold, it's not as heavy as that denser water deeper. So I think the odds of it mixing with that 39 or 40 degree water and eliminating it is not quite as high. So let's go back to Josiah's question. How deep does the water need to be? Well, I've seen successful walleye ponds where we actually electrofish them in warm weather and water less than 6 feet deep. But my opinion and what my knowledge says in the lakes where we've successfully produced walleye, even this is going to be like in Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri, it's where there's a good sharp drop off of like a rocky bluff that goes down 15 or 20 feet with a gravelly bottom. And then if that lake has got a couple of coves that have rocky bottoms, walleye love that and they thrive. And in the lakes where I've got them even now, they're having to compete with smallmouth bass and largemouth bass. They do a pretty good job. So how many per acre should you stock? That's going to be based on what you already have. So if you've already got a pond that's got a lot of largemouth bass in it, and your walleye are 5 to 6 inches long, well, a 5 to 6 inch long walleye is about the same size as a cigar, and shaped just like it, and almost colored like it. Probably don't taste like it, but shaped like it. And a 12 or 13 inch bass can eat some of those. So I think my stocking rate would reflect the possibility of attrition. If you can stock them where they can access habitat pretty quick, the good news is your water's cool and your warm water fish like largemouth bass are not going to be as active, where the walleye are cooler water fish and they're going to be pretty active. So the odds of them being able to survive goes up simply because you're going to do it when the water temperature is cooler. So as far as the depth, if you've got some 12 to 18 foot, 20 foot depth, that's plenty deep. If you don't, then they're going to be living in a similar niche as largemouth bass and the other fish that you've got in there with them. So how many per acre should you stock? Kind of based on your goals and what else you've got in there with them. If your goals are to dial in on the walleye and make them grow good, stock as many as 20 or 25 per acre. If not, supplement stock ratio numbers of like 5 per acre. And since you've got several ponds you're going to stock, I think I would look at the pond that has the best habitat, the deeper water, with the least amount of competition. If you've got all three of those things together, which maybe you do, maybe you don't. And I would look at putting some of those. I would look at putting them there, in that pond. And something else. If you expect to have attrition, use a higher stocking rate. And if you're getting 400 walleye, you're probably paying. If you're getting them, if you're in Clinton, Missouri, and if you're getting them from Kansas, you're paying $7 a piece. If you're getting them from Illinois, you're probably paying more like $4 a piece. So if you're paying the higher number, you really want to put enough of them to where your survival rates are going to be higher. So there's a kind of a long-winded answer on that. Wesley Ellis, hi from Northwest Georgia. Bluegill are still tearing up the Aquamac. You still got pretty warm water over there. So, hey, let's pause a minute, do a couple of commercials. If you guys have not had a chance to go check out huntbirddog.com, take a minute and do that. It's a pretty dadgum cool premise there. And my son and one of his running buddies are partners on that thing. Dadgum, it's cool, I'm telling you. Jonathan is my son. He came up with the idea, back in February. He says, Dad, I really kind of wanted to go hunting this season, but I had to find an outfitter. And by the time I made up my mind I wanted to do it, we were well into hunting season and the outfitters were booked. He said, I don't know anybody. I know one guy that would let me hunt. And the season in that county is too short. I didn't have enough time. It was only 2 more weeks and I couldn't plan it out. And he said, there's not much chance I'm going to sign a lease. I mean, he's in his early 40s. He's got 3 small kids that chew up his life, which as well they should. And so he came up with the idea of what if we did something kind of like VRBO and Airbnb for hunting? So rather than digging into the details, for those of you guys and gals that love to hunt or you're wanting to take a guest and you want to do it kind of spur of the moment, or plan it out with a short time frame, go to huntbirddog.com and look at the experiences and tell them the Pond Boss sent you. And the Purina Mills, we're kind of winding down on fish feeding season. One of the things I'm going to tell you is as your water temperature drops, the demand for feed will drop because fish are cold-blooded and they're not going to eat as much. And so, Purina's Aquamax. What I tell people now, I just got through visiting with a client of mine where we stocked some catfish in the lake out near Lubbock, Texas, and he's got maybe 4 weeks worth of feeding he can do. I said, just go buy a couple of bags of fish food, set the feeder where it's going to throw out about 1.5 pounds or 2 pounds of fish food a day, and just feed it till the feeder's empty, and then don't worry about it, and kick it back on about the 2nd or 3rd week of March when the water temperature starts going back up. So, let's see, I see some things here I'm going to get to. Texas Hunter Feeders, they're a sponsor of this show, and I love their products. Every once in a while somebody will have a little sticker shock because, feeder prices have gone up $100 since 10 years ago. And, $1,000 for a fish feeder, that's a lot of money, but you get what you pay for. And not only are the products good, their customer service is good too. So, in Easy Docks of Texas, David Schneiderman, I haven't seen him on here today, but he usually watches this show. He'll chime in from time to time. So let's see here. Virgil Meyer. Virgil just built a brand new pond over in southeastern Iowa. And let's see what he says here. Stocked panfish this past May and still 3 inches from being full. 3 feet from being full. It's scrolling past me here. It's been persistently dry. Is there an ideal time to stock predator fish even though it's not full? Thinking about next spring, would next fall be too late or compromise anything being a year to 18 months later than the panfish stocking? Yeah, let's talk about that. So, if you stock them in the spring, you're going to be able to get fingerling fish that can grow up in your environment and maximize their growth rates. So, what I'm going to tell you, Virgil, is even though you're 3 feet from full, I know your lake. I've seen your lake, been there with you, helped you, coach you through designing that thing. And you did a great job on it. So you've got all the habitat that you need. Your water quality is really good. And I think if you waited till next fall, you would be getting fish that are 5 to 7 inches long. And they would be, 6 months old and cost probably $5 or $6 a piece, maybe more than that. Whereas if you buy fingerlings at the end of May, 1st of June through there somewhere, they're going to cost $1.25 to $1.50 a piece and grow up in that environment and far surpass that 5 to 6 inches by September or October of next year. So your growth rates would be better, especially if you got oodles and gobs of fathead minnows like I expect. If you wait 18 months, the bluegill are probably going to wipe out those fathead minnows. So I think even though you're still 3 feet from being full, you and I could talk about it, but my advice is going to be to stock baby bass next spring because the table is set, you got the food chain, your water quality is good, and it doesn't matter if it's full or not. So Michael Eric, 250 to 325 for 5 to 9 inch walleye from several hatcheries there in Iowa. That's really good. Doug Cusick had to pay $10 a piece for 6 to 10 inch fish in Kansas back in 2014-15. It's still that much. Jay Spires, hey Bob, your thoughts on the green blob underwater lights. Also your thoughts on color. Heard green is the best, but see blue and white lights now. Your preference, if any. You know, it depends on why you want to have the lights. The thing about the green ones is they're filtering out the UV rays pretty well, and fish are just attracted to them like magnets. Whereas if you want to use a blue or a white light, it depends on the depth you put them under. They may end up showing green anyway, because the prism effect of the water is going to filter the different rays of the light as it cascades up through the water column. So the green monster fish lights, deep glow fish lights, I've used all those, and they are fish magnets. And I've leaned toward green. That's been me. Jim Allen, it takes me 4 to 6 weeks to get my Purina smallmouth bass nuggets from Feeder Supply. If I get it now, will it winter over, unopened, or in a large plastic garbage can? Okay. No, if you want to get it now, I tell you what Purina's done that nobody knows about, nobody talks about, is part of the reason that they used to put expiration date of 6 months on a bag of feed is for the vitamins, because the vitamins that they put would oxidize, break down, disappear, turn into something else. But now they've got it packaged well enough that the vitamins are not going to deteriorate. So if you want to buy some now just to have a couple of bags to get ready in the spring, then there's nothing wrong with that. And just the only thing you got to do is make sure you got it sealed up really, really good so rodents don't get in it over the winter. So that plastic garbage can is a good idea. I would put it in a plastic garbage can, put a lid on it, seal it up, at least get 1 bag or 2 bags. I think that's a good insurance policy. Good call. Jay Spires, definitely have to shout out and agree with you on Texas Hunter Feeders. Worth the money and the customer service with them and Foster Lake, who we bought them from. Had a small issue with water coming in on heavy rain days. Had 0 problems getting support and replacement. You know, that I have had issues with Texas Hunter Feeders when you have a heavy rain, especially rain with high winds where the rain blows sideways, where water can get in and enough of it where it can get just kind of blow up under the lid and go down in the corners and make the feed clump up and make the feed clog up and clog up the feeder. So what I've done from then on is I'll go buy, I can't think of the name of it, but this little insulation strips that's rubber with stick them on one side. It's use them around doors and things. It's like a real thin foam, and I'll cut those and glue those, press those up in the inside corners of the lid, and then when I put the feeder on it and tighten it down, put the clasps on it. I also make sure I put some clips inside those clasps so they can't just pop open, which they usually can't pop open anyway. So hey, if you guys got questions, throw them at me. I'm going to scroll back here and make sure I haven't missed anything. Pretty interesting to me about those walleye, $2.50 to $3.25 from hatcheries in Iowa, whereas like with the ones from Kansas, they buy the fry and then they turn around and sell the adults, and their survival rates are probably not even 10%. And that could be a reason that they're selling for that much more money. And plus, people like my customers will pay it. Let's see here. What else we got? All right. Looks like I've covered all the questions so far. Looks like we got 31 viewers, 43 comments, 29 viewers. We got people dropping off. So that leads me to a point. I'm noticing that we're not having the same numbers, and I don't know if it's because of me or because it's content or it's because Facebook is not getting the message out for people to be able to build an audience. So this is my 5th year of doing this, and I'm toying with the idea that this show may have run its course. And so what's going through my mind now, and I'd love feedback from you guys, maybe not right now, but in an email or whichever, however you want to communicate. Just you can put it on this show if you want. But I'm thinking about changing formats. I don't really like Facebook that much because they won't let me build an audience. They make me want to try to buy an audience. And I think what I do stands on enough merit that I should be able to build an audience just by what I'm telling you. And so Wesley Ellis, no notification you went live today. See, I don't know why that's going on. And I'll get back to these questions here in just a second. But here's what I'm toying with. I want to keep a presence, so what I'm thinking about is setting this up, not necessarily live, but where I do podcasts, video podcasts, as well as audio on specific topics, and making them last about 20 to 30 minutes, and hit these topics that you guys are interested in. I think part of what makes this work so well is I get to interact with you. And so that's been a big deal. And I've been doing this now for 5 years, and I don't miss a lot of Wednesdays. I think I've missed more this year than ever, maybe 6 Wednesdays this year, which, by the way, next Wednesday I won't be on because I'll be with my family for Thanksgiving stuff. And so I'm not sure why you guys are not getting notified, which makes me think that it's something else about the way Facebook does business and their algorithms. So I am toying with that idea, and I would love to hear your feedback. So let's see here. Let me scroll back through here. It looks like Danny Mac's got something here. Danny Mac from San Antonio, America, had a green blob LED light. It fouled a lot and dies after about a year. I don't know what the green blob light is. I've used the green monster fish lights and deep glow fish lights, and those services are pretty good. The deep glow lasted about 5 years, and we still had it when we sold our place. I don't know if they still use it or not. I should have asked them, but I didn't. But the green monster fish light lasted, as I recall, maybe 3 years, and then the bulb burned out. And, okay, I see what you're saying. I got a metal halide type light. The bare bulb burns the biofile. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, I got you. Yep. That's the deal with the green monster fish light, because it had a halide type bulb in it. Is there any reason not to run a fountain over the winter in central North Carolina? Okay, Tim Deal, let's talk about that. I just talked about why not to do it in Nebraska or Kansas, but North Carolina is a little different. Let's come at it this way. Why would we run an aeration system or run a fountain? If you want to run a fountain to aerate a pond, then the main reason to do that is to keep oxygen in the water for a recreational fishing pond. So once the water temperature hits the point to where the ponds turn over, then the water temperature is pretty much autonomous top to bottom, and the lower the temperature gets, the higher its affinity for oxygen is. So that cooler water, the cooler it gets, the more oxygen it can hold, and you only have to have enough so the fish don't die. So that's like 4 or 5 parts per million, but you can get as much as 8 or 10 parts per million as the water temperature drops. And you're not likely going to run out of that oxygen unless there's a compelling reason, like a whole lot of aquatic plants under ice. So, since you asked about running a fountain, the reasons to not run a fountain is for the energy cost compared to the efficiency of it. It's not necessary to run it. Unless somebody says, it looks nice, I want to run it. That's why I would run a fountain in North Carolina. North Kakalaki. Okay, so it looks like people are not getting the notifications. So I don't know why that is. I do not know why. That's not something I can tell you. Dave Weber got the notification. Danny Mac didn't. Wesley Ellis didn't. Michael Eric says, "Oh no." That makes me smile, dude. Let's see here. Wesley Ellis, I want to put in a pond fountain, is wondering if there are any that pull water from the bottom versus the top. I don't know any of them that pull water from the bottom. I do know that there are some products out there that pull from deeper than others. Most of them draft from like 18 inches, but there are some that draft from 4 or 5 feet. Let's see here. Harrison Davis, we will miss the live shows, but you got to do what Pond Boss wants and needs to do. You know, I want to be efficient and effective and build an audience. There's the bottom line right there. I want to build an audience. I want to get the analytics up. Most of all, I want to convey information. Now, most of these topics you hear me talking about now, I've covered over and over time. But what I haven't done is done it concisely, where it's information where you can find a topic, listen to that podcast, and get that information about aeration or pond stocking or designing a lake or building a dam or whatever it is. So here's Jim Allen saying, for what it's worth, I'd rather meet live once a month than do blog because your forum pretty much covers that format. I don't know enough to ask the right questions. Always learn from someone else's questions. Love the live. Thanks for whatever you decide. I'd be pretty cool with doing it once a month. I think that would be good. And I'd love to have your input. Really, truly, all y'all's input is going to influence what I end up doing because you guys are the ones that take the time to watch this on Wednesdays. And so that's really, really important to me. One thing I did think about, Jim, is I know the forum covers a lot of things, but I also think that I've had enough requests from people that are saying, hey, I love listening. I was with a guy 2 weeks ago, and he's 72 years old. He said, I love your Facebook Live, but I kind of got to fast forward through it so I can hear the meat. And so that right there was another thing to affirm to me that a lot of times guys, they listen to it later or watch it later, and they're really looking for some meat so that they can learn about what they can do to help with their ponds and stuff. And one thing I have thought about is when I start to do a regular podcast, having questions coming from you guys in advance would help me decide what to talk about and how to talk about it on these podcasts. So, and I haven't made up my mind yet. I just mentioned it to Debbie yesterday, and she kind of gave me a blank face, and her influence is pretty important. You guys know what I'm talking about. All right, Robert Dyer, after a large fish kill in August, my water turned very green. It's continued to be green even though the water started to get partial ice. I thought it would turn back when it was cold. I'm going to make an assumption here, Robert, and you tell me if it's any different. Virgil, I see you down there. I'll get to you here in just a second. We'll talk about it. After a large fish kill, my follow-up question to you would be, did you get the fish out and go bury them? If you didn't, if they decomposed and broke down in the water, then you added all that flesh nutrient load back into the water, which caused the water to turn green because of fertility. And so that being the case, when the water gets cold like it is now, it should clear up. If it doesn't, then there's something else going on, and I don't know right offhand, I can't think of what it could be other than if the mineral levels have gone up, like calcium carbonate. If the mineral levels have gone up, it's going to pigment the water. And so I don't have a real definitive answer without asking a bunch of questions first. So I'm going to assume that you didn't take the fish out, that you had a heavy plankton bloom, and the water has to get a little bit colder, and then it should clear up. But, and I'd also like to know the visibility. Just because it's green doesn't mean it's bad. If you've got a Secchi disc, check the visibility, and if it's 30 inches or better, then you're going to be okay with that. All right, Drew Schmidt, anybody ever put corn? Oh, I disappeared here. In winter, yeah, people do that all the time. That happens a lot. It won't mess anything up. All it'll do is feed the deer. Virgil Iron, can you talk about when I should think about aeration for my pond? And remember that you mentioned not aerating until year 2 or 3. Yeah, okay, so Virgil is up in south central Iowa, southeast central Iowa. That's a great description, isn't it? Eastern Iowa in the middle. And so his lake covers 6 or 8 acres. And we'll be a little bit vague here, Virgil, just to protect what little anonymity you've got left now. And he built a great lake. perfect site for it. And one of the things, he was an excellent student. Now, when I start working with folks to help them design their habitat plan, what I try to do is coach people up so they can make their decisions on what to do for their habitat plan and their management strategy. And that's exactly what Virgil's done. Now, one thing you did, Virgil, is you eliminated quite a bit of topsoil. So by eliminating topsoil below the water line, then you're going to minimize the risk of nutrients becoming lodged up or utilized up in the water column. And that's real important in areas where lakes freeze over. So you don't have a big bank of nutrients in the soils underwater. And I don't expect you to get a lot of nutrients in your new lake until about year 3 or 4 after you've been feeding the fish and the fish are growing and you're growing some plants. Plants start to die off and decompose, release their nutrients. So I don't think it'll be until like year 3 or so before that your water chemistry begins to be, or your water quality starts to become compromised. So the main reason to aerate a pond is to make sure that you can expedite its opportunity to process organic waste. Basically, that's the main reason to aerate. So the reason that I said to wait until year 2 or 3, because I think it'll be that long before you get enough nutrients in there that it's going to compromise, and even then it won't compromise your water quality. But that's a good time to start looking at it. And what we can do is we can talk about your water quality as the lake begins to mature. So that's my answer about that. Jeremy Day, love your information. Thank you. You're very welcome. Jay Spires, well, you guys talk. Holy cow! It sounds like there's a eulogy being listed here. Let me read this. Let's see. We'll definitely miss the live shows. The interaction, but definitely get it. You shouldn't pay for viewers through Facebook. I agree with that. No live shows. Not what I wanted to hear. I guess Santa has me on the naughty list. Possibly 1 to 2 times a month live. I have folks that can submit topics. Or have folks that can submit topics and questions prior to any show. Have a shorter question and answer segment. Regardless, I'll follow the boss and the group in whatever format you choose that works best for you. Many thanks. Right now I'm thinking about doing 1 a month and see what that does. However, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. I just know that right now we got 25 viewers, and a year ago we'd have 60 to 70. So that speaks to me for whatever reason, whether it's people are getting tired of hearing it or not getting what they want from it, or Facebook isn't letting me do it. Okay, so let's see here. Let's go back to Robert Dyer. Some of the fish came out. Coons got the others decomposed. Okay. In a 3.5 acre lake, is feeding Aqua Max MVP 4 cups 2 times a day enough to change the water quality in gravel pit 50 years old? Blue-green, that's probably not a blue-green algae bloom. But the answer is yes, that is enough. That is enough. That is enough to in a 3.5 acre pond, even feeding, even with aeration, 4 cups 2 times a day over a 9-month period. Yeah, that's enough to begin to change your water chemistry. But you know what? Here's the biggest clue. The pond is partially aerated. I'm not sure what that means, because partially aerated to me means not aerated. If a pond is partially aerated, then the aeration can't do its job. So in other words, if you've got a 3.5 acre pond and there's one diffuser in it and it's sitting in water 8 feet deep, then the rest of that gravel pit pond the water's not being moved, so therefore it's not able to process its wastes quite as quick, which could perpetuate a bloom going into the wintertime. So, here's my advice. Go measure the visibility depth. If it's 30 inches or more, you're okay. If it's 18 inches, then we need to talk. Jay Spires, time of the year. Let me see. You know what? I'm not sure why you're asking that. What time of the year? Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, so it's fall It's Wednesday, church tonight, 24 users. Who cares about the fall? Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. So in other words, my viewer numbers are down because people got other things to do. It's the fall. They're not thinking about their ponds. They're thinking about deer season, high school football, college football, and whatever's on TV. Okay, looky there. Drew Schmidt. I love live podcasts. I love live, but the podcasts are great too. It's a busy time of the year too. Yep. Okay. All right. I see what you're saying. Your knowledge is priceless. You should have thousands of viewers. That's what Debbie tells me. I love that woman. Okay, so Robert Dyer, they eat it all in 5 minutes. You're probably feeding about right. And when you're feeding MVP, keep in mind that for every 1.3 pounds of feed that you're feeding, roughly, and let's just make it simple, 1.5 pounds of feed yields 1 pound of fish and half a pound of fish waste. So you can do the math on that and extrapolate, and the fish waste is what the water has to process that actually causes the bloom, and so that, adding fish food does alter the water's quality. Now, if you get flushing rains and it flushes some, that affects it as well. It means that you have less buildup. Partial means that my neighbor has 2 diffuser heads in a very small portion of the pond, and I can't afford yet to get electricity to do the other 80%. Okay, those diffusers are probably not real relevant. That's the answer I'm going to give you. Probably not real relevant. Jeremy Day, is there anything to do specifically to attract more ducks to a 6 or 7 acre pond? Would love to see them use it in the winter. The smart aleck in me wants to ask you why you want ducks. Because ducks and geese are famous for eating a pound of something and pooping 2 pounds. So they can foul your water. But to answer the question, and Jeremy, if ponds freeze up around you and you're the only one with an open area in there, the ducks are going to come. If you want to attract more ducks, feed them. Feed them corn, but let me tell you this. Feed them to where any corn or duck poop can't wash into the pond. So maybe on the backside slope of the dam, or maybe feed them on the backside of the spillway, and then that's the way I would roll with that. There's Jason Nipstad checking in from Fort Bragg area, Fayetteville, North Carolina. Jeremy Day, I agree, priceless. Well, if I had an ego, you guys would be stroking it, wouldn't you? Danny Mack, you're just too wholesome and conservative for Facebook. Can you read that into what I say? I don't really talk much about politics. I did put one little comment up on my personal page the other day, and boy, it created a firestorm. I said, looks like it's time that California should look at banning hammers. Woo! Man, that stirred up a pile. I ended up taking it off. All right. Also, your knowledge given to the masses is dangerous to the private pond service industry. You don't see low-carb cooking shows on TV. That's great. I have to use that line. James Allen, your knowledge, my knowledge is for sale, by the way. Yes, I do have books for sale. Hey, go to pondboss.com. Hey, you remember Pond Boss? That's part of the reason we're here. $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. All kinds of little nuggets right in here, right in these pages. Yep, there's some right there. You just have to get one and read it. Or get somebody to read it to you. Let's see here. John Henry, I couldn't find the link for the live show. It's on the Pond Boss Facebook page. So when I go live on Wednesdays, and it's on the Pond Boss Facebook page. I'm thinking something to do with the notification settings of my account. I do get notifications from other live shows, not sure how or why, but they have up to 1,000 viewers at once. Wish I knew what or how they do it. I may have to dig into that a little bit because I don't know that there's anything that I need to do to help you get a notification. I think that sits on your shoulders. But you know what? I'll dig into that and find that out. Jeremy Day, thanks. You're welcome. Jason Nipstead, commie birds, cormorants are showing up in herds of over 100. Ooh, I scrolled past it. Let me find it. Yeah, I'm just too wholesome. It's pretty funny. Okay. Oh, there we go. I'm ordering a drone in the hopes while filming them they scatter. That's a good idea. If you can put a drone over those birds and make them fly off, man, that'd be cool. Ban the hammers. Yeah, that created something. I'm telling you, it was pretty funny. Okay, Virgil Meyer, should I be concerned about the daily visitor geese that enjoy my pond? So far they have enjoyed it as much or more than me. You know, the thing about geese is that's another reason we talk about aeration in 2 or 3 years, because if you get a flock of geese that become residents and they're pooping in the water, pooping on your dock, pooping everywhere, then they're going to be adding to the nutrient load of your lake. And that's another classic reason. I mean, there's areas of the nation, especially the Atlantic seaboard, where geese are such a nuisance that they actually disrupt a pond's ability to thrive. Okay, let me see what we got going on here. Harrison Davis. It's already 7:26. Sheesh. 8:26 where Harrison is. I haven't been able to catch any largemouth bass 12 inches or larger in the past 2 years in a 2-acre subdivision pond. As far as I know, there have been no fish kills. The only thing I can think of is the local fishermen have removed them, or they've been fished so heavy that they become hook shy. Any other possibilities as to the disappearance of almost all 12-inch largemouth bass and bigger? There's a couple of things I can think of. Number one is predator. That in your area, that sure could be river otters. In the wintertime, they can really do a number on the bass. And if the bluegill numbers are high, then they can minimize recruitment. So bluegills can eat baby bass right when they come off the nest. So there's 2 reasons right there. Those are things that you could think about. So if there's predators like what Jason Nipstead was talking about with cormorants, that could be a reason. Pelicans could be a reason. River otters could be a reason. But also a low recruitment number could be the reason. Drew Schmidt, if you do a podcast, there are lots of wildlife podcasts you can link up with to get more ears. I've learned so much from this show. Very appreciative. Thank you very much. Virgil, my vote goes to a lot of value for the live cast. You know, one of the things that's interesting is, so it sounds to me like I need to do 1 or 2 of these a month and promote it and make sure you guys know about it so that we can do it. So I'm going to keep giving that some thought. I'm definitely not going to do it next Wednesday because I'm going to spend time. My oldest son, Ty, is coming in from Phoenix, and we're going to meet at my number 3 child, Jonathan's house, and we're going to be thankful. That's what we're going to do. Got kingfisher birds and a persistent blue heron. I thought when the weather got cooler here, they would go on their way. We took the fountain aerator out, but left the ring with the lights on it in our pond. Blue heron has made that his hitching post. I can actually see that. That makes perfectly good sense to me. Will they do significant damage, or should I just enjoy them eating a fish or minnows and let them eat minnows? You know what? Leave them alone. The great blue heron, you guys have heard me tell that story about lurch. I know Danny Mack's sitting there thinking about it right now because he's heard it about 10 times. But a great blue heron is not going to decimate a fishery. Neither is a kingfisher. Kingfisher is going to make a lot of racket, be cool, land on a limb and go eat a minnow and be fun to watch because those things are really efficient once they figure out how to play the game in your pond. So I'm going to tell you that those 2 birds are really not going to be devastating. Now, you're going to get pissed off at them every once in a while when they swoop down and like a great blue heron pecks a 1.25 pound bluegill, drags it up on the shore, and they can't swallow it and flies off and leaves it there. That'll aggravate you a little bit. But overall, they're not going to damage an entire fishery. So, hey, it's about that time, 7:29. I'm going to wrap it up here. We've been in at 59 minutes and 30 seconds. So I'm going to wrap it up right here, guys. What I'll do is I'll have either Leanne or I will make some posts on the Pond Boss Facebook page. So you guys come back and check in with that. I am going to take that advice to see if there's things we can do to get more notifications out there and see if that makes a difference. But right now, I know I'm going to do some podcasts that are topic driven because I've got some demand for that. Plus, I want to build the analytics up, because I think that's pretty important. Like if I ever get to the point where I'd like to sell Pond Boss, and being 67 years old, how long am I going to live? I mean, I don't have an expiration date stamped on my chest, but I know it's prudent to create a succession plan. So I'm working on that. I don't know what it means, but here we go. And I don't even know why I told you that. So, hey, I'm going to wrap this up. Hey, $35 a year, Pond Boss Magazine, pretty darn good gift. If I don't know anybody that gives Thanksgiving gifts, but now's a good time to do that, or even Christmas. Plus the books we've got. I don't have any here to show you, and I gave my last hat away a couple days ago. So I'm going to wrap it up. I want to tell you how much I appreciate you guys watching and hanging out with me. It's fun to do it, and it's fun to interact with you guys. And it'll be a week from Wednesday before I come back on. So until then, adios.